Welcome everyone to this series of OTF Connect's webinars, and we're really happy to have you join us today. It's Truth and Reconciliation in the Classroom, and facilitated by Tesa, Fiddler, and Jodie Williams, and I'll say a little bit more about them in a moment. First, I did want to recognize that we are joining from all over the province in different locations. So we acknowledge that we are gathered in the territories of various Indigenous peoples. And we further recognize that as teachers and educators, we are on a journey of learning and doing our way into new ways of doing, learning, and teaching. I'm really pleased to be your facilitator today. My name is Ian Pettigrew. I'm a senior staff member at OTF. And I'd like to share a few words about our facilitators today. We have two joining us, so we're pleased to have both of them with us. Jodie Williams currently works as the Indigenous Education Consultant at the Dufferin Peel Catholic District School Board. As the co-chair for the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Education Association of Ontario, Jodie travels globally, giving workshops and developing resources to support Indigenous education in schools. She is also the lead on a provincial community of practice for Indigenous knowledge of mathematics, which involves a collaboration with NASA, Maori educators from New Zealand, and the Navajo Nation in the United States. Jodie instructs at York University, delivering AQ courses for teachers in the area of Indigenous studies. Previously, Jodie also worked as a program officer at the Ontario College of Teachers in the Standards of Practice and Education Unit, where she was responsible for education policy and accreditation related to teacher education and First Nations, Métis, and Inuit education. Jodie's ancestry draws from both Anishinaabe and Irish roots. Together, she and her husband, Kevin, whom you'll meet later, have 5 daughters and 1 granddaughter. That's great. Welcome, Jodie. Jodie's professional partner this afternoon is Tesa Fiddler. Tesa is Anishinaabe, mother of 2 daughters and an educator. Born and raised in northwestern Ontario, she considers Oneguming and Muskrat Dam First Nations home. Her family also has historical connections to Gitchinume Kusib Inanumig territory. She currently lives in Thunder Bay with her family and is coordinator for Indigenous education with the Thunder Bay Catholic District School Board. Tesa has worked in the field of Indigenous education at the K-12 grades for nearly 20 years. At Lakehead University, she co-instructed the specialized honors education course, Indigenous Perspectives and Practice in Education. She has also instructed teacher AQ courses at Lakehead University, including Native Studies Part 1. But both of these wonderful people and educators are with us today and sharing their knowledge in this OTF Connects webinar. And so I'll get out of the way and let them do that wonderful work. So without further ado, Jodie and Tesa, the mic and the screen are yours to share.
Thank you, Ian. So I'm just gonna screen share here. And yeah, so Tesa and I are delighted to be here again today to share with you some of the work that we've been involved in. And I just want you to, in case anybody is into Twitter, you can take note of our Twitter handles. And also, because this is an FNMI EAO resource that we're going to be sharing, please feel free to note that Twitter handle as well, at FNMI EAO. We also share lots of information through that social media platform as well. Did you want to do this, Tesa?
No, I can do this for sure. So we established some learning goals for the different presentations that we do, just to try and to keep Jodie and myself focused. Otherwise, we could. I'm a real storyteller, and I could go off all over the place. And we want to make sure we maximize the time that we have here with you. We're here with you until 5 o'clock. So we're going to primarily be looking at the new resource, Truth and Reconciliation in the Classroom, and then I will explain a bit more about the resource when we get to it, and then provide examples of how to use this resource in online classrooms. I know that Jodie and her partner Kevin, Kevin particularly is great at demonstrating how to use this resource in Google and D2L, is it? Yeah, so different platforms for online learning. So we'll be able to provide those examples. But before we do that, we always, guide teachers, I guess, or suggest to teachers that they always situate themselves in whatever work that it is that they're doing. Particularly in Indigenous education, or when working with any group that is equity seeking. In what is now Canada, anytime that you're doing work around Indigenous education, you should always be situating yourself and acknowledging who you are and where you are from. And who I am. Ian, you did a fabulous job sounding out the names of my communities. Both of Kitchener-Megazib and Onigaming, they've repatriated or reclaimed their traditional Anishinaabe names or Anishinaabe names, Ojibwe and Ojibwe names that their ancestors once called their traditional territories. And so Kitchener-Megazib is up near Muskrat Dam, where the larger dot is up there. Onigaming is the lower left-hand corner of Ontario, and that's on Lake of the Woods, and that's in the Treaty 3 territory. That's where my father was from. My mother was born and raised in Kitchener-Megazib, and then I married into that community of Muskrat Dam. Currently, the little red dot at the top of Lake Superior is Thunder Bay, and I've been here for 22 years. So we weren't planning on this being our forever home, but this is our home for now, and I've been very blessed to be able to work with wonderful partners throughout my board and the city and the province. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you're going to see an aerial view of my community of Muskrat Dam. It has 3 roads, and it's got a population of about 350 people on reserve, and the only way into the community in the wintertime is by ice road or by plane, and in the summer it's only by plane. A small between a 9 and 36 seater, so it depends on which airline you fly with, and that's how you would fly in. So this little community is 1,408 kilometers, so we can round it off to 1,400 kilometers due north of Toronto. So when we think about Thunder Bay, if we were to travel from Toronto to Thunder Bay, Thunder Bay is a lot closer. They might be about maybe 900 kilometers due north of Toronto, but we have to get around those big, beautiful lakes right in the middle of us. And so it ends up being about an 1,800 kilometer trip all the way around those lakes. And so it ends up being total around 20 hours to get through to Thunder Bay from Toronto. So in the wintertime, if you were to travel from Toronto to Thunder Bay, that's 20 hours. And from Thunder Bay to Muskrat Dam is about another 11 hours. So that's 31 hours to get from where Jodie would be up to where I would meet her in Muskrat Dam. So, recognizing that distance and that the diversity that exists in our province, that's really what we must do. I'm constantly, the advocate for geography in Ontario, that Thunder Bay is really Midwest Ontario, that we have 2/3 of Ontario's landmass north of us. It might not be the population, but there's definitely a group of people up there that deserve to be acknowledged, and the resources that our country needs and that our province needs is in that area too. So we need to recognize that the contributions that they'll be making to not only our economy but to preserving our lands, I think, as well. So we can go on to the next slide. So I situate myself as Anishinaabe, and This is an identity, an Indigenous knowledge identity circle. So it really is about reflecting on yourself um, as a person, and not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be Indigenous, but it's about um, recognizing who you are and what your impact is, or what your role is in Indigenous education. And I talk a little bit about where I come from. If there's anything I want you to take away from this circle, is to think about the 2C2L model: the community and the culture, the land and the language. So where do you come from? What power and privilege do you bring to that classroom environment? That's critically important. There's a lot of harm being done potentially right now with online learning, because teachers are giving handouts that might not be vetted through Indigenous education leads. It's overwhelming. We understand that completely, that online learning is overwhelming, but we have to be very careful that assignments are not being given out that are going to harm and perpetuate stereotypes and historical atrocities that happened. So where are you from? So as educators, as an educator, I talk about my community, my culture. I'm Anishinaabe. The land that I come from, I showed a picture of my little community, the language that I have, the Anishinaabe language that I grew up with. In the bottom part, sorry, and we use this model, and this is not traditionally an Anishinaabe model, the medicine wheel. But we use it because people are comfortable with using it as a graphic organizer. It's actually a model that has been borrowed from our brothers from the West. And this model was not something that I created. It was actually a model that was shared with us by the late Roy Thomas. He was a woodland artist up in this area. And he used these points to really break down influence of Indigenous knowledge in community, and in his work as an artist. So looking at where you come from, and in the medicine wheel, the teaching is that are in the circle. In general, in the circle, the teaching is you start in the east, which is the quadrant where or the doorway where life starts, and where the sun rises and where a new life begins and the day begins. So that's why I started with where are you from and the 2C2L model. Then we move along in a clockwise rotation. Where have you been? Your formative, your lived experiences. I grew up in all of those areas: Thunder Bay, Winnigaming, Muskrat Dam, Kitchener-Megawissip. I spent time in all of those places when I was a child, and had many influences from my relatives in those spaces, in those communities. I also, had both my parents attend residential school, and I myself had to leave to go to high school because we were living in the north. I had to leave to go to high school when I was 12 years old. And so, quite a traumatic experience, but it made me realize how much I needed somebody like me, because I had found educators like myself, or educators who really took time to care for me when I was really lost as a high school student. And I knew then that I wanted to become a teacher and do the work that they did. And so that was kind of where I've been and where I'm now, looking at where I'm physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and just reflecting on my own age and my own health. It's a really difficult time right now, being kind of locked in. You're not locked in, I'm very fortunate that we have a home. We are safe at home. We're not stuck at home. We're safe, but we're not able to see family and friends, and for me that's really difficult, and to not see my students and my colleagues. So, and that's where I am now. And then really, where are you going, and planning out that future piece. Where do you want to go, and what is your vision and your goals for your career and the work that you're going to do in Indigenous education? So, so that's just a brief example of what Indigenous Knowledge Identity Circle is. Jodie, you can move along. And just very briefly, we could take that circle and transfer it not from yourself to a student in your classroom, or two students in your classroom, or even having students do it themselves. Where are they from? Where have they been? Etc. And it helps you gain a better understanding of what those students' needs could potentially be, and what their strengths and what their strengths are, what their gifts are. And oftentimes when we have a student that might be more challenging to engage, we focus on some of the barriers that exist rather than what the possibilities might be. So thanks, Jodie.
Unmute. Always fall into that trap, forgetting to unmute. So just to following along with the format that Tesa was sharing. So where do I come from? So our family here, we didn't know growing up about our Anishinaabe connection. My grandmother didn't say anything. She wasn't raised with her family. She married my grandfather, who comes from a long line of Irish farming Catholics. So we have really big families on that side. And so it wasn't until, in the last 10 years really that that we've come to learn about this. And so of course, that's been a real driving force. Obviously it connects into the work that I do, but it also helps in terms of where I teach. I work outside of Toronto in what would be designated an urban center. And a lot of the students in my board and surrounding boards, many of them share similar stories of disconnection and trying to seek guidance and connection back into community. And that's a similar story on my husband's side as well. Through being impacted by the 60 scoop. But we're very fortunate. Today we have our own family that we're working really hard to kind of reclaim and relearn and have that a big part of our lives. But I want to really emphasize, and this is why Tesa and I often co-present together for a variety of reasons. I do not have a colonized experience. I do not have an experience. I do not come from a reserve. I did not grow up on one. I have white skin. And so my lived experience is, I could never speak on behalf of somebody else's lived experience in that way. And so oftentimes, I always try and co-present with somebody who does come with that lived experience, because it's important that we center those voices in the work that we do as well. So certainly I bring to you my knowledge and experience in education. I've worked on a variety of projects, both locally, provincially, as well as internationally now, and in developing and helping to develop resource. And a big part of the work that I'm involved in is advocacy. I'm sure Ian can attest to. Somebody once described me as a hurricane, and somebody else described me as a fireball. So I try to be relentless in the work that I do in terms of advocating for Indigenous language and Indigenous education to be at the forefront. So so that's a little bit. And as Ian mentioned, we just welcomed our first granddaughter into the world 6 weeks ago. So that is, so we're now on this new path of being grandparents, which is wonderful. So before we dive into the resource, we want to just, in case you're not familiar with our organization, so we are a subject association that belongs to the Curriculum Forum. and through the Ontario Teachers Federation. And as many subject associations, we operate based on volunteer hours. So myself and Tesa and others donate our time to this organization. And we really have a large part of what we do, again, is in providing support and resources, professional education sessions, whether it's webinars like this or summer institutes when they were funded by the ministry. Just putting that out there in case you want to raise some stink around that about getting funding back for those. But yeah, but I think and maybe Tesa will talk to this slide, something that I'm proud of and that really is important with our work is this Elders Advisory Council.
So it was a couple of years ago that we recognized that although we had elder voice on our association, we recognized the need to have a group of guiding voices to really provide advice and leader. Sorry, my dog is barking in the background. Hope you can't hear. Can you hear her, Jodie? Oh my goodness. My apologies, guys. A puppy. We have a puppy. So to provide that leadership for us and to really ensure that we were doing our work in a good way. And also recognizing that elders come in many different ways, that they could be knowledge keepers and not necessarily, elders of age. And different lived experiences bring different gifts along with them as well. So we have a beautiful group of people that are from across the province, from the Fort Frances area, right down to Southern Ontario, and people who were Ojibwe to Mohawk to Haudenosaunee Oneida, to Inuit people, people with Métis voice. So we wanted to make sure we captured all of those, all of that knowledge as well, and not that we're taking that knowledge, but that we are respecting that knowledge, and we go to them with. If we have correspondence to send out, if we have a newsletter to send out that has some important and very potentially challenging information, I guess difficult information, we send it to them and ask for their approval as well. So a beautiful group of people, and that group was brought together a couple of years ago, and they were brought together based on different recommendations, whether it was from other people in our work and work that we do in different areas of Ontario. It could have been from people with different organizations that had aligned themselves with different knowledge keepers as well. And many of these elders and knowledge keepers, they have historically worked with FNMIO in different capacities as well. So we're really, really fortunate to have these beautiful people guide us in this journey.
And just to add in too, it really also ensures that what we produce in terms of resources or on our website, that these are all vetted so that you can be assured that what we're putting out is legitimate. And so sometimes that also slows the process down in terms of what we're recommending and putting out, because as you can imagine, to make sure we are properly consulting with is really important as well. Tesa, this one.
So moving quickly along, we just have a couple of slides to show you before we get into the resource that we wanted to share with you. We want to talk about Anokanagowan, which is foundational to any of the work that we're doing. If we're talking about 2C2L, it's really community, culture, land, and language that really forms our worldview. And that is when we're working with Indigenous education, we have to, you know, consistently reflect on what the worldview is or what it should be, because there might be some disconnect there, particularly for kids who have grown up with community or with their families, recognizing what the worldview could be. And our worldview, you know, is really what is relationship, what is reciprocity, what is responsibility. You know, our understanding is that there is no concept of land ownership as well. And so therefore, how could we own land if we didn't, how could we sell land if we didn't own it? We couldn't own land because land was alive, land was life-giving, and because land was life-giving, we considered her Mother Earth. And so there was no way that we could actually give Mother Earth away, or we could cede and surrender Mother Earth as it was stated in the treaties. So there's a lot of content just within this one term. And in Okanagan doesn't translate literally to worldview. It translates to the laws and the way we live, the laws for the way we live, the laws of life. And so, you know, we have to be considerate of that in this work that we're doing around Indigenous education and truth and reconciliation. So, okay.
And we just thought, we don't have time to show it, but if Ian can plop this link in there in the chat box for you. And I do believe he's shared out our slide deck. So you'll have access to all of these links through our slide deck. But this is just an example of an Okanagan in a video, a short video with two knowledge keepers, Isaac Murdoch and Jerry Ottawajawan. So again, it's just to kind of give you a sense, because as Tesa was saying, the language is so important, but it's very hard to go from Anishinaabe into English, because English is always so like noun based. One word for equals one thing, whereas Anishinaabe is like one word is a whole description, and it's all very relational in terms of describing those pieces. But essentially, yeah, it's our connection and our responsibilities to creation. And I think, you know, those are when we were looking at doing this resource, you know, certainly one of the things that we wanted to ensure was that there were multiple opportunities to connect to the curriculum. But although this particular resource is focused, the teaching guide that accompanies it is focused specifically to the revised curriculum coming from the TRC, which was in this particular case, it's grades 4 and 5, social studies in those revisions. However, the resource, which we're going to dive into, you'll see very quickly, can lend itself to any aspect of the curriculum. And so it was designed in this way so that it would be very applicable to any teacher in any subject to be using this in those ways. Okay, so Tesa, give you a little bit of background to this resource.
Mm-hmm. So Jodie spoke about how when the ministry revised the curriculum or enhanced the curriculum, grades 4 to 6 social studies, grades 7 to 10 history, the ministry had provided opportunities for funding to create resources to support that. And so we applied and we were successful. And so we wanted to make sure that we did create a resource that was going to capture a voice and knowledge from all over Ontario. So we went, we traveled north to Kitchener-Megazip, and we traveled with a video maker, and we made beautiful professional videos that are broken down into short clips of 4 to 5 minutes each. And each of the clips follows, for Kitchener-Megazip, Each of the clips follows a set of themes that are directly from the curriculum. I literally took the sample questions out of the curriculum, that curriculum document, and made sure that we answered those sample questions in one of these videos. The second series of videos, we traveled to Onigaming, my father's territory in Treaty 3, and we really spoke more about what is ceremony and what does ceremony look like. And again, you know, taking the curriculum strands and apply, or the overall expectations, and applying those expectations to the videos that are in there. And then we, one of our colleagues went to his home community of Chapleau Cree and captured his ancestors' voices, or his knowledge keepers' voices around what is their relationship with land. So really it came down to what is relationship with land. This whole project was about relationship with land. Although it wasn't intended to be that way. That's what, when we went venturing out on this great kind of our Ontario tour of, we're going to capture all of this knowledge and we're going to bring back this beautiful document. Well, we did capture knowledge and created a document that was like, we didn't, they created the document, the people who contributed, but it's just brilliant. And I know I have teachers that are in high school level that are using these clips, and they are sad that we don't have supporting resources for their grades. So it might be something we'll have to venture into later on. But and then we do have, is it Oneida? Ray John? Oneida. So Ray John did a language piece with, there is no video or audio with it, but there are some language games that are included in this package as well. So, so it's a series of videos, and there is a teacher package, a teacher guide, and student workbook, because we know that we don't want to be working with student workbooks, but we know that we need them sometimes. And even if it's a launching point for some of the work we're doing, it could lead into some great inquiry, particularly around this work as well. So, okay, Jodie.
I was trying to be really stealthy and pull it up while you were talking.
No, all I saw was you.
Oh, I know. And then I realized I hit stop share. So anyway, it's back on. So what we're going to show you is a couple things. So unfortunately, we had to switch over to a membership because in order to keep ourselves sustaining and keep providing the work that we do, when the government changed over, a lot of the grants that we would have accessed also disappeared. And so if you're not sure, there are many boards, school boards, who have purchased a license. So we try to make it as accessible and affordable and meeting everyone's needs. So if you're not sure if your board has a license already, you can contact me. We're going to share our contact at the end. Otherwise, you can go on here online and get an individual membership. And so that will allow you access to all of our resources. And we're just showcasing this one. There's many others that are quite substantial as well. And I'm just going to show you two places here. So this is where this TRC resource is housed. However, don't panic if you don't have access. We have also this page here, student resources. I'm just going to toggle between the two. So we've opened this page up publicly, so there's full access since we're all at home trying to manage online learning. And so we opened this page up as an opportunity, and this is what Kevin's going to be showing, is how do you take this information that resides here and utilize it in your classroom. So before we get into that, Tesa mentioned about a guide. So we have, these are the student guides. Now, if you want the teacher resource, the teacher guide, which has the answer keys, it's over here under the lockdown page, but don't worry if you can't access it. This is a grade 4 and 5 level. So the answers are they're very obvious. if you, but if you do have access, you can download these guides. And the beautiful thing is we were able to do everything in French as well. And so in both sites, I'm going to go back to the student resource site here. So again, the guides are available. The only difference is they don't have the answer keys in them. And we also broke them down. So this is the full, but then we broke them down onto their units by unit so that there was easier access in terms of uploading into your classroom. And Kevin will show you in a minute how that works. So here is the library that Tesa was talking about, this beautiful library of videos. And you can toggle, they're also, if you click on the French button, it gives you, it's French subtitles, but there's also, the language, it's subtitled because sometimes they're speaking in the language, so it gives you those subtitles as well. And I'll just give you a little sample of what these videos involve. So I'm going to click on this one here. Now, if for some reason when you're watching the video, if it's coming up disruptive or grainy or something, don't worry, it's probably on your end. This is being recorded, so it will come out nice on the recording of this, or you can just hop on to the website yourself and have access. But I'm just going to show you here to get just a glimpse of what these are involved in.
We're called Kichinemeksib Inenwak, which translates from the Ojibwe Cree language, which is our native tongue. It means the people of Big Trout Lake. So we're situated in the middle of the boreal forest, about 600 kilometers north of Thunder Bay, and just within the Hudson Bay lowlands.
There's about 28 rivers that flow into Big Trout, and every river that flows into Big Trout gives life to this lake.
The reason why people, stayed in this area was plentiful, like fish was plentiful that time, still is. Plus the hunting was pretty good here because every season there's a different kind of animals that come by.
We have pristine lands, pristine waters, and we can drink out of the lake still.
So that's one example, and I'm just going to show one other example so you get a sense from over here. Do this one.
Ceremonies to me is something that's been a part of us since we were born. It's that name that you carry, like my name, Umashkuzos. It's not just a name, it's something that connection with that spirit world. It's an instant connection. They know who's giving them tobacco. They know who that is. It's like, hi, I'm Doug Sinclair, I'm giving you tobacco. They don't know that name, but they know who I am. I'm giving you tobacco. And that ceremony is huge. Like it's a part of us. It's a part of your heart. It's a part of your spirit. It's a part of your mind. It's a part of everything. So
I just, because of time, of course, we're always battling time. But that's just to kind of give you a sense of what these videos are. And they're all in kind of bite-sized chunks in order to, attention spans are challenging at times, but the guide is, connects into all of these video clips, and there's all kinds of, guiding questions, connections to other activities. And why we wanted to set it up this way is that the challenge is, of course, that the majority of teachers in Ontario are non-Indigenous, And we wanted to answer the challenge of how do I teach about somebody that, one, I don't know anything about. We didn't get this information growing up either in the education system. And there's also that big fear over, I don't want to be appropriating or teaching something that's isn't appropriate or would be considered offensive. And so what we wanted to do by creating all of these little video modules is to give you the relief of your job as the teacher is not to teach about somebody else. We're giving that voice to you to bring into your classroom so that the person on the video can speak for themselves. And then you as the teacher, you can make all of those connections into your classrooms after you've experienced that together in your classroom. And so we're also inviting you to go on a co-learning journey with your students as well. And it's to make all those connections. And hopefully, although this is residing in that elementary classroom, when we get into secondary or higher up grades even, to start to really dig into, with Kitchenmeke, Gusup, and Innuwag community, they were jailed. Like you see their Chief Donnie Morris that was in that little sample, they were jailed for 6 months for saying no to Platinx Mining Company. Because the mining company just wanted to go in and destroy, sacred sites and things like that. So there's opportunities to really go in deeper into what's happening today with respect to resource extraction, making the connections into, and again, it always comes down to land, right? So why have Indigenous peoples been displaced off of our lands? Why do we have the Indian Act still? And what is the connection into resource extraction? So there's really great opportunities to go into inquiry on that. But for now, this is, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. He's going to show you the logistics on how you could bring this into your online classroom. And to be thinking about, again, these are our children in grades 4 and 5. And so, we want to really bring in the contributions, the beauty, the significance of Indigenous people and knowledge systems for that. So I'm going to stop sharing. Kevin's going to come on here and take over for a moment.
All right, so thanks Jodie for passing it over. I'm going to show you how, at a very sort of high level, how I embedded some of the resources that you've seen from the FNMIA website into a Google Classroom, and then I'll show you what it looks like in Brightspace, which are the two main virtual learning environments that seem to be in use right now. So in Google Classroom, you could either do it within an existing classroom, or you could build a separate one specifically for this subject matter. So for example, I might have built one for social studies. So I'm going to go to classwork. And if you're familiar with Google Classroom, under classwork, you can build out assignments and material, quizzes and things like that. And so what I did to kind of keep things nicely organized for the students is under create, I created a topic. And so I basically pulled this window up. I entitled it Unit 1, Who We Are, which coincides with the unit title from the resource on the website. And so I've got that here. And then I built out an assignment corresponding with lesson 1. And so again, if you're new to Google Classroom, under create, you would just go assignment, and then you can title it, give some basic instructions, and then add the resources. Over to the right, you can allocate to which students you want it to go to, determine whether you're going to grade it or ungrade it or leave it ungraded. Set a due date, and again, under topic, I can send it to that topic, Unit 1, Who We Are. And so I've done that already, so I'm just going to show you what this looks like once it's built, and you can kind of see all the parts that are there. So here we are. So there's the title, Lesson 1, Where We Come From, and again, that coincides with the resource that you saw on the site. Again, I've added some sort of language around sort of introducing the idea to the students as they sort of are introduced into the lesson, and then give them sort of an overview of what they're going to experience. So in lesson 1, they're going to learn about the Moose Cree community. I'm asking them to watch the video, and I'm linking the video straight from, I grabbed the link from the FNMI site, okay, and I just, when I built that lesson or assignment out, there's the option to add different things, and you can add a link, so you can see the Vimeo link is there. So this way, I've limited in terms of where the students are getting to and what they have to go and click on. Everything's sort of built in and housed right within the assignment in the Google Classroom for them. So they can click on the first link here, and it would open the video in Vimeo, which is where those videos are housed. And then on the other side, I've linked to the PDF for the unit. And so if I click on this, you can see there's the Unit 1 PDF. And the nice thing about how they've designed and built this is that students can input right into the PDF. And so they can respond to the questions and the reflection questions right in the PDF, and then they can save it and continue on. So if I go back here, that's embedded in the first lesson, okay? And then if you're familiar with Google Classroom, you can see that it's been assigned to some students, and in this case, these are our daughters that we've put in this virtual classroom as sample students. But you can see that it's been assigned, and I'm waiting for them to be turned in. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the classwork section, and under lesson 2, you can see that I've given some outlines to the topic, which is where we live, some instructions, and then I'm pointing them back into that original PDF. So they're going to basically grab it in the first lesson and then continue to go back to that same file. And I'm directing them where I want them to go within that PDF to activity 3. And again, I've directly linked to the video that corresponds to activity 3 in this particular one. Okay, and so that's basically how I've set it up. And as you can see, I've built it out as an entire unit, and I would release the lessons as we went through the unit and learned together. And so with that, I'm going to take a moment, and I will now show you what this could potentially also look like in Brightspace. Okay, so now that we've seen what embedding the resource in Google Classroom looks like, I'm going to just quickly show you what it looks like in Brightspace, which is also known as D2L, which is sort of the other main virtual learning environment that is in use in the province at the moment. So in Brightspace, you have an announcement section where students land when they enter the virtual learning classroom. So I've just built out, maybe I'm going to introduce the unit. So I've just built out an announcement here, Truth and Reconciliation in the Classroom, a little welcome. And I would then either embed it right in the announcement, or if they're familiar with it, they would know for today's lesson that we're going to go to the content section. Just give it a second to load. And so in the new version of Brightspace, it allows us to design units. And so along the left-hand side, you can see there's Unit 1, similar to what we saw in Google Classroom. And if I expand this, I've got similarly Lesson 1 and Lesson 2 that I've built out here so that you can see. So again, if you're new to Brightspace, how I did that was basically I created the new unit by clicking the New Unit button, gave it the title that corresponds with the resource from the FNMI EAO site. And then to add the lessons, I just go over here to the Add Existing. I click on that, and you can see there's a wide range of things that I can choose. And so in this case, I chose, what did I choose? I think I maybe chose the assignment one in this one, and then it comes down into here. Oh, sorry, not add exist, create new, my bad. Create a new lesson. And so anyway, so I'm gonna create a new lesson, and I can give it, I'll just name it Lesson 3, which would be the next one in the sequence. Okay, just to give you a sense of what this is going to look like. And so you can see there it is underneath. And in Brightspace, it defaults to being hidden, so you can kind of construct things. So I'm going to go back up to lesson 1. And similarly to what we did in Google Classroom, I've built out some description in terms of what the students are going to see and engage in the lesson. And then down below, I've embedded the embed code for the Vimeo video. Now, the way the privacy settings are set up, it won't actually play within Brightspace, but if I click on the watch on Vimeo, it does work. It does open up the video for the students to watch. And again, it saves them from having to go to the site, find the right video out of the video collection that's housed there, and then come back to Brightspace. They can all kind of do it just from clicking within the virtual classroom. And then underneath, I've built a link to, again, that same PDF. You can see it'll open up here. There it is. So this is sort of the unit package that we'll work through together as a class as we watch the videos and discuss things that are happening in the unit and things that we're learning. So if I go back to Brightspace, again, I can show you lesson 2, same thing. I've embedded the video and I'm directing them back into that original PDF that they got in lesson 1. And the reason that I'm doing that is because they've created that PDF in such a way that students can input. We can't really extract individual portions of it and use them separately. So if you use it as one sort of complete file for the entire unit and just direct students back into it, it works best, and it allows them to be able to input into the PDF. And so that's kind of what it looks like in Brightspace. And so you can see the resource is easily embedded within either of the two sort of main virtual learning environments, and it makes it very easy to use in instruction and very accessible for students. So with that, I'm going to throw it back over to Jodie and Tesa.
Thank you, Kevin. One of the questions that came up, Kevin, was, hang on, I'm scrolling through here. Did you use the lessons from the teacher guide, or did you develop those in some of the activities? It's mainly from the guide itself, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think he just threw in a bit of his own language and provocation questions for that. And I'm just going to go back here to screen sharing. I know that we are pretty much out of time. Never have enough time. But again, so when you, so Ian, I don't know if you put the link into the chat box, but if you want the link for the student resource page, so people have access to that. But these are these individual PDFs that you can download, and just really quickly, just to show you what they look like. So they're actually fillable PDFs. So you can, when you upload them, the kids can type right into the PDFs here, and they connect back to those videos. So it's just giving, examples of questions to get them looking at the videos and then making connections back to your own self, right? So why is it important to know where you come from? Pieces like that. So we have come to the end of our time here. Very quickly, I'm going to ask Ian as well to put this link in here. So this will give you access to guidelines that we created just to help, steer people in the right direction. And I think always, think about permissions. Do you have permission with what it is that you're using, especially with regards to Indigenous knowledge? And always make sure you cite your sources in regards to that. And just be aware, that there's lots of stuff out there in the land of Google. Be very, very careful on what you're accessing through the internet. We have a lot of resources that you could spend a lot of time going through, and there's enough content to keep you busy for a long time there. So Tesa, do you want to have any last few words here?
I just echo what you say. an example of even acknowledging where knowledge comes from. I, as an Anishinaabe person, can't take that knowledge of the identity circle model. That's knowledge that was presented to us through our education program, and we asked if we could take that model to modify it to meet the needs of teaching post-secondary or pre-service educators. And so, it's always about those permission pieces. Otherwise, then it becomes more about appropriation and tokenism. And that is something that we do not want to do. Or
yeah, and just on that too, I always ask myself, how am I presenting Indigenous peoples? I want to make sure I'm always presenting people as coming from, and knowledges as coming from diverse, sophisticated, complex civilizations. Because what we often see is a very reduced, minimalistic, tokenistic, we coin it as leathers and feathers. We don't want to see that happening in classrooms. We want kids to be looking at people coming from, very intelligent, with so much to contribute. So always be kind of, keeping that in the back of your mind, and ask. Please reach out to us. As Tesa had mentioned, every board has a dedicated lead position, or should have. Check in. I tell teachers in my board, just simply email and ask if you're, listen to your gut. If your gut is telling you, I'm not sure about this, then just simply send a quick email either to us or to your lead, and check in first, and just, double check if you're not sure.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess we've come to the end. There's lots more we could talk about, but this is our contact information. And again, I think Ian's going to pop that in the chat box. And I guess we don't even have time for questions, eh, Ian? Quick.
So here's an idea. Let me just do a formal close. And if you're able to stay on with us for about, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes, if that's okay. And then if folks want to ask those questions, they can do that. How does that sound?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So without further ado, then I took profuse notes here. I'm not certainly outside the learning journey with everyone and all the 160,000 members that are members of OTF. I want to say to you, Jodie, and Tesa, and Kevin, Chi-miigwech, for your work. Thank you for your good words today, your good ways. And it's obviously quite clear that we have lots of work to do. And I think that's in our acknowledgement as well, that we're on this journey to right historical wrongs, but also current ones. And that's going to take all of our work. Justice Murray Sinclair made the observation that education got us into this mess, and education is what will get us out. And certainly you're part of that journey. You're bringing that passion, that wisdom, that personal and professional experience, along with some fabulous resources which you've generously shared today. And yes, there's more work to do and more to hear from both of you. And I know you're committed to that work. We're proud at OTF to provide that platform and space for you to do this work in such an authentic, respectful way that reaches all of us, where we are. And I think a big idea is to begin, just start where you are today, and go from there. So again, a big chi-miigwech to both of you for your continuing work on our behalf, all of our behalf, and your present work will be a legacy certainly for the future, in the near future and 7 generations on. So with that, I'll thank everyone for their participation too today, for their attention, and great comments in the chat box, and observations there, and the questions that are to come. In the next few days, you'll receive a link to this archived version of this webinar, along with an evaluation survey tool, which we'd really appreciate you taking a few moments to fill out. That helps us on our journey of continuous improvement and meeting your needs as members. And then there's some other links, including the contact information for Jodie and Tesa, so that you can connect outside of the webinar. So I'll just allow anyone who needs to stay behind to ask a few questions, and we'll limit that sort of 10-15 minutes to honor people's times, including our great learning co-facilitators. So with that, we'll end the recording, and maybe look forward to seeing you another time.